We're going to be talking about why QAnon is so popular, what makes it so interesting to people, and why does it draw in so many people from different walks of life. So for this, we're going to be using a article written by a user called Rabbit Rabbit, who works as an alternate reality game designer. So for you on YouTube, I'm going to put the link down in the box below. You can check it out there if you want. This is basically me going to be talking through their points that they made on the article and why QAnon has become such a popular thing, and basically talking about it from treating it as an augmented reality game and talking about the similarities between augmented reality games and how that works with QAnon. So this person, I don't know their name because their username is Rabbit Rabbit, and that's all we know. So they work in alternate reality games, or ARGs, as I will refer to them from here on out. LARPs, experience fiction, interactive theater, and serious games. So these types of games are games with rabbit holes that invite you into a wonderland and entice you by looking through the looking glass to see kind of the other side, the hidden reality. According to the author, QAnon is very similar to an ARPG or a LARP. So one thing that is very important in ARG and game design also in general is something called apophenia. So apophenia is the tendency to perceive a connection or meaningful pattern between two unrelated things or random things. For example, objects or ideas. The example that they give about apophenia is that they were designing a real-life game that was played like in a real location, kind of like like exit room kind of thing. I forget exactly what it was called, but kind of like that. And they had made it like really, really simple, like super easy puzzles, like Scooby-Doo level, easy stuff that should be no problem for anyone. But on the floor, there were like scraps of wood from when they were building the set, and 3 scraps of wood on the floor made the shape of an arrow pointing to a blank wall, and it derailed the entire game for that group. Like they started looking for ways to like what's on the wall? Is there something written on the wall? And then they had like tools in there, so they were like ideating of like breaking the wall. Maybe there's something behind the wall, and I think in the end he had to like step in and be like, hey, okay, there's nothing with the wall. It's not a thing. This is a great example of how people can find connections and patterns in things that don't have any. Like in this situation, the scraps of wood were completely random, but then when it happened, he was like, oh, that is like absolutely like so clearly an arrow on the floor. And it was completely accidental. It was not meant to be there, and it derailed the whole game. So in most ARG-like games, apophenia is the plague of designers and players, because it can lead to participants wandering further and further away from the intended plot and causing the designer to scramble to get them back or incorporate that idea into the game. If any of you play any like tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, for example, this happens also a lot in Dungeons & Dragons. The game master will set up hooks in the game to lead the players towards certain paths, but sometimes players will just like, what's this person's name? And you're like, I don't know, like Bramblehook Bumblebee, and they're like, we want to know what's up with Bramblehook Bumblebee or something like that. And then it goes on this complete tangent because the players saw something and they're like, we want to know what is happening with this thing. Or they're like, or a character that is completely a side character becomes very important to them, and you have to incorporate them. So, these things happen. But so normally apophenia is a problem for designers and players. But in QAnon, apophenia is the point, because there are no solutions. So there are no real solutions, right? So the whole point is random data is misinterpreted to come to intended misunderstandings. Like the people who put out the QAnon drops or, point people in directions, they don't, like, it's not random, People are pointed in a particular direction by people who are disseminating disinformation or misinformation. So just briefly, misinformation is information that is might be wrong, but the intention is not to mislead people. Disinformation is information that is false, and the intention is to mislead people. So you can accidentally say false information without realizing it, which is misinformation, or you can intentionally say wrong information to mislead people, which is disinformation. Just to quickly make the difference here. And so yeah, it's not random, the answers that Q wants you to arrive at. They are designed, and you're being led towards those answers. And people get a rush from discovering the answers themselves, or feeling like they discovered the answer themselves, and being accepted by a community, although they were led to these answers, and they feel like they discovered this themselves. This is all intentional. All of this, making them feel like they discovered it, making them feel like they found a community, all of this is intentional. And once they start, looking for puzzles to solve through this way, then every little thing, every minute detail will start to look like a clue. So the more information is out there for them to look at, the more content there is for them to play through, the more apophenia will start to take hold. The more they'll start to see connections between things that are completely unrelated. Like, they'll just start seeing weird connections that don't make any sense, but because they're training themselves to see these connections, they see them everywhere. These connections of this different information out there, these manufactured connections, rather, lead to desired outcomes to the Q handlers that they want, because they want the players to arrive at specific conclusions. It's not like they just put stuff out there and they're like, whatever. No. They want you to arrive at very specific things. And all these connections, all the stuff they're putting out there is intended to lead you towards those answers. And then players are rewarded for arriving at the correct answers by adoration by the rest of the community, How many times have you seen this, be you part of any community and, you start doing something new and there's a cool community around it. I'm not talking conspiracy theory, this can be anything. And then you start posting about hey, I did this thing, which other people have already done. They're like, oh, hey, cool, congrats. And then it feels nice because people in the community are recognizing you. So it's the same here, but with Q, it's like, I realized that Pizzagate is real. And they're like, hell yeah, you took the red pill. There's this sort of system here that makes sure what theories live on and what die, because Q was not the first of these, posters, anonymous posters that are dropping information. There was CIA anon, FBI anon, but they didn't really catch on, but Q really caught on. So then they started pushing Q more, and they do this with other theories within QAnon as well. They try out what sticks, what doesn't, and when something sticks, they start pushing it harder and harder. So there's this weird hive mind system that decides what, not consciously decides, but that kind of pushes certain ideas to the front and certain die away and are forgotten. It's weird. So then let's talk about the gameplay of QAnon. So QAnon is purely propaganda. There's no getting around this. It's purely propaganda, and it's relying on age-old tropes like anti-Semitism. The Jews are have a child sex trafficking ring, and they're sucking the blood of children to stay alive for longer. Like sucking the blood of children is a really old anti-Semitic trope. It's really old conspiracy. It's not a new conspiracy. And then, of course, good old anti-science. You know, why should you trust the scientists? The people who have dedicated their lives to this thing and researched it for years and years and years. Why should you trust them? So Q helps the players develop an internal world that best serves Q's own interests. Because, like, none of that, what Q is suggesting is real. You develop an internal world because all the stuff that has been perpetrated is not real. But once you create this internal world, the logic of the real world don't apply there. So you can develop a world where the desired outcomes that you want make sense. And that's what Q does. So Q is a fictional character. We have to remember this. And they are a very specific type of fictional character. They're the mysterious stranger. So the mysterious stranger that arrives and drops you a hint about a long hidden secret. They won't tell you straight up what the answers are. Because, you know, then the story wouldn't be interesting if someone just comes to the protagonist and says, here's the answer. No. They give you a hint. It's something that's been kept secret for a long time. And now you realize it. And you're like, oh shit. And they give you clues. It could be, you know, one clue or many clues, but they're hard to follow clues. They're ambiguous. They say things like, follow the money. Don't let them fool you. Or, this goes all the way to the top. You know? Those types of things. Having this mysterious stranger come to you and be like, dropping you some hints, it creates a sense of mystery, you know? So Q is a plot device to create mystery. And so let me go through some of the things that you are told to do during this game. One of them is to do your own research. So you've probably heard this from people who believe in conspiracy theories, and QAnon specifically. They say things like, you know, do your own research. We're just giving you info so you can do your own research. Don't trust what's being told to you outright. Do your own research. So Q wants you to come to your own conclusions. But of course, as we mentioned before, they're not your conclusions. They're Q's conclusions that Q wants you to come to. One of the phrases that QAnon people often say is follow the breadcrumbs, which refers to, you know, follow the different clues and hints to arrive at the truth. And this is done specifically because people are resistant to changing their beliefs, especially if these beliefs are their core beliefs. So people are very resistant to change those. And attacks on core beliefs are perceived by people as attacks on ourselves. They can be even perceived as strongly as physical attacks. That's why talking about politics, for example, is so heated, because politics goes to our core beliefs. And when we argue about our core beliefs, we feel personally attacked. That's why it can get so heated. So someone coming to you and saying, hey, there's a pedophile, blood-sucking cannibal ring. You're like, no, there isn't. You're not going to believe that. You can't start with that. You can't open the door with that. But ideas that we generate ourselves, those are the ones we defend. So if we guide people to our ideology, or if Q drives people to the right conclusions, people will defend those ideas a lot more, because people will feel that they came to these answers themselves, even though they were led to that answer. So this takes time, of course. It's not like a one-day thing. It takes time. And Q uses these breadcrumbs in form of questions to guide you there. So these breadcrumbs are used to lead you to what they want you to believe. And it's done over time so that you think you came up with the idea yourself, or you came to the conclusion yourself, and that makes you defend it more because it's your idea. You weren't tricked into it. You did the research and you found the truth. Well, you didn't, you were led to it. And it's not the truth, it's propaganda. Another fact that makes this strong is the eureka effect. It's also known as the aha moment. So I want you to think back to like school, doing like a math problem, let's say. I know for some people that's an uncomfortable memory, but do you remember that moment when you figure out a math problem and you go like, I got it? It's a really good feeling. This can be in whatever you do. Whenever you figure out a problem and you have that light bulb moment, it feels really good. So knowledge gained through your own effort is incredibly rewarding. And also it comes with a hit of dopamine. So your brain gives you a little squirt of, not squirt, but a little bit of dopamine when you figure out a puzzle or solve a hard problem. And this, in QAnon, figuring out these puzzles gives you aha moments, which give you a physical reward, and it helps to reinforce the desire to seek out more of these puzzles. You want to solve more of them. You want more of these aha moments because they feel good. So yeah, the aha moment helps QAnon players to search for more puzzles to solve. Next, one part of the do your own research is, of course, mainstream media. So Q doesn't actually want you to do research because actual research has already been done by actual professionals who dedicate their lives to research, and they've been doing this for a very long time. Q doesn't want you to look at that stuff, obviously, because that would disprove Q's points. No. Do your own research doesn't actually mean do your own research in what we in the rest of society view as research. No. Do your own research means don't trust other people and institutions, but trust me, as in Q, or trust the QAnon community, but don't trust other people and do not trust institutions. That's what do your own research means. It is specifically there to sow mistrust with mainstream outlets and institutions, to cut people off from that. And then, of course, the reason why no one knows about the conspiracy is because it's a conspiracy. It's not because it doesn't exist. No, that means it's true. Because most people don't know about it, that means it's true, right? Because people would otherwise know about it, right? And of course, an important part of doing research is, well, doing your own research, I should say, is the community element of it. So when you solve a puzzle together, it's a great way of forming a community and joining a community. So when Q drops some new clues, the people come together around it and they start talking about it, and they start looking like, okay, I'm going to look at this part, you look at that part, and different people look at different pieces and they come together. It's a great way to build community and give people a sense of something to do and a sense of purpose. An example of this, what I was just talking about, these different do your own research things, is that here's some Q drops. So this is a Q drop. It's just text, but here's what it says. Their need for symbolism will be their downfall. Follow the owl and Y head around the world. Identify and list. They don't hide it. They don't fear you. You are sheep to them. You are feeders. Godfather 3. Q. So then, when you have these things, here's some more, another examples. Identify symbolism, owl Y. Which performers, celebrities, supported HRC during the election? This is Hillary Clinton. Who performed during her rallies? What jewelry and tattoos are present? What other events do they attend together? What does Hillary Clinton represent to them? What celebrities have owl/Y head symbols? What politicians have owl/Y head symbols? What powerful people have owl? What powerful groups? Why are they worn shorn openly? Their need for symbolism will be their downfall. Isn't this exciting? Like, if I was playing a game, like, this is exciting, right? Their need, and then, so this is a Q conspiracy image. Their need for symbolism will be their downfall. Horns, horns, horns. Why? 6. There's the owl. Ilhan Omar. Ilhan. She has an owl pendant. The horns. Everywhere the horns. Goat head, goat head, goat head, goat head. It's everywhere. The number 6. Hand gesture. It's everywhere. Everyone's doing it. Only a zombie believes in coincidence. Protect your kids from these demons in evil Hollywood. Everyone's doing it. Everyone's in on it. So you see how you start seeing these connections between things that are unrelated. So you start connecting these dots, you know. Q said, look for the owl. And then you see, and look for the Y symbol, you know, this. And then you see one from a celebrity, and you're like, wait a minute. See another one from a celebrity. Wait a minute. And you start looking at the symbolism, and you're like, holy shit. So now the players of the game learn to see symbols and signs everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. And then they start asking, like, could this be real? This could all be real. Like, Q said to look for these things, and they're everywhere. Like, he's right. Is he? They start questioning that. Then we're gonna move on from, we've been talking about fiction. Now we're gonna talk about how this stuff moves from fiction to reality. So, one of the things that makes QAnon so great is that it's very hard to prove something doesn't exist. Like, you can't prove there are no aliens, for example. Like, you can't definitively prove that there are no aliens. Like, you can theorize about why there probably is or there probably aren't aliens, but you can't for sure say with 100% certainty that there are no aliens. And continuing that logic, how can you prove there isn't a satanic cult eating children? You can't prove that there isn't one. Like, you can't. Because there's no proof that there is one, right? So to QAnon people, this of course is a perfect out. No one can prove that there isn't one. So yeah, I was saying from the Save the Kids rally in LA, where Hassan Piker was, and then CNN was also there, and the CNN guy was talking with someone, and he used this exact thing. He said, how do you know there isn't this thing happening? Like, he angrily yelled. He was like, what? Like, how do you know there isn't this thing? And he's like, there isn't. How do you know there is? And he was like, how do you know there isn't? And that was exactly the defense that person used. So you get an idea of weird symbolism. The horns, for example. And then you start seeing it everywhere on rock stars, right? They have tattoos with horns on them. They do the hand sign. They wear jewelry with goats with horns on them. And then you start seeing those rock stars everywhere on social media, in news, in ads, in people in the comment sections on Facebook using the horns. It's everywhere. Everywhere, the horns. It's everywhere. Then you start being like, it can't be true. Can it? Then you start noticing there are abusers in Hollywood. And your doubt starts growing. you start making connections. There's abusers in Hollywood. They keep using these horn symbols. Two unrelated things are now connected. Even if Q is wrong about something sometimes, it doesn't matter because it's closer to the way people feel. So people won't care if it's not always right because they feel like it's right. You know? And the fact is that this thing, QAnon, isn't happening anymore in like the dark corners of the internet, like on 4chan. This is happening on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Of course, now, luckily, we're seeing social media platforms trying to do something against this to some degree. But it's like, this is happening on big platforms, which is part of the reason why it has reached a lot of new people. Because if it was just on, 4chan or 8chan, it would be a fringe thing. But because it has gotten to these big platforms, it's been able to pull in a lot of people who normally wouldn't know where to look for this stuff, wine moms and stuff who are bored. And remember, laughing at them or insulting them to their face will only drive them further into this. They'll only go back to their Facebook groups, or the Telegram groups, or whatever, and they'll get more assurance and praise from people. They'll come to say, my mom said that I'm crazy for believing in this, and they'll say, well, your mom is a normie, and of course the sheep don't understand this like we do, and they'll give you assurance and praise, and it'll entrench them even further. Remember this, it's very important. If you have someone who's deep into this stuff and you want to get them out, don't mock them to their face. Don't insult them, because it won't help. It'll make things worse. Now that we have people indoctrinated into QAnon, they can continue the game by themselves. So at this point, they know the game, so now they can continue the game by themselves with very few cues. The game is everywhere, right? All the players need is a drop, and it's off to the races, They start looking for the connections everywhere themselves. You don't need to guide them as much anymore once they're into it already. And that's the beauty of it, right? Because normally in an ARG, the problem is that you have to create content very quickly when the game comes out, because people will start going through the content like crazy, and you have to try to keep up with them to provide new content. And at some point, you have to close, call it quits, because, it ends at some point. You don't have the resources to make more content. But with QAnon, the beauty is that the people will make the content themselves. You just need to drop in a few little things here and there, and they're off to the races. You don't need to do much. Every coincidence is a puzzle to be solved. The game is now everywhere for them in the real world. They don't need much to keep it going. The players keep the game going by itself. So then, QAnon becomes a great way to open the door for other conspiracy, i.e., in other words, more puzzles to be solved, right? Because you're craving for puzzles. They give you that aha moment, the sense of community, sense of purpose, something to do when it's boring, like when COVID is here and you don't have a job anymore. You need something to do for 9 hours per day when you're not commuting to work and working and coming back. You have like 9 to 10 hours and you're not doing anything. You're bored out of your fucking mind. But now you have a conspiracy theory, and hey, here's these other conspiracy theories that also offer you puzzles to be solved. 5G, anti-vaxxing, anti-COVID. And this is why we see many people who are in QAnon also believe in a whole host of other conspiracy theories. So, talking about indoctrination. There is some virality to Q, for sure. But the fact that Q has been spreading is not an accident. What makes Q so great? What makes Q so great is A Q gives instructions that both point to QAnon theories, but also hides from others that it is QAnon until they have been indoctrinated. So if you don't know what QAnon is, and you see a QAnon image, you don't know that it's a conspiracy theory. But if you know what QAnon is and you're into it, you know exactly that it's for you. That's one of the great things about it, is how it's hidden in plain sight. In posting boards and places where QAnon grows, there are a list of memes and instructions for how and where to post them, as well as invitations to create and collect them. These are specifically put out there to get more people into QAnon. So there are instructions and memes for people, like show these to people, do this, do that. And Q also gives specific instructions how to red pill your friends and family. And this is, of course, a reference to Matrix, where you have to choose between the blue pill, within which you sleep in the fake reality, or the red pill, where you wake up to see what the world really is. So there are very specific instructions on how to get your friends and family into this. This is a cult. Make no mistake. This is an online cult. So this indoctrination is very strong and very dangerous, as we can see. And the fact that Q feels like it came out of nowhere is intentional. It's not an accident that it feels like, it popped its head out of nowhere. This is purposeful. It's part of Q's propaganda and story, because Q wants it to make it seem like this came as a grassroots movement from people. That people discovered this themselves and rose up against this threat that the elites wouldn't rise up against. And then the problem is that the more people try to shut this down, Google, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, service providers, TikTok, the more Q believers will double down on this stuff. Getting even bigger endorsement from top politicians in the world as well doesn't help. Like Trump saying, when he was asked in the town hall, I think last week, he was asked, does he disavow QAnon? And he basically said, they think I'm, trying to save people, and I think that's a good thing, right? He definitely was signaling to them that he's on their side. That doesn't help this, right? And then platforms trying to close you makes it seem like you are right because, the big companies are coming for you. You must be right. So when Facebook cracked down on the QAnon stuff just recently, it closed around 800 Facebook groups. Now, 800 Facebook groups coming to light organically. An ARG, which is endorsed by the president. An ARG with physical demonstrations organized in multiple countries and over 200 physical locations. This is not organic. Understand that this type of stuff doesn't happen organically this easily. This type of stuff, it doesn't happen organically like that. There's even a full-length movie paid out of pocket that is being distributed for free around the world. Hundreds of publications are sale on Amazon. This is a lot of work. Facebook groups, politicians supporting, physical demonstrations, a movie, books. All of this is a shit ton of organizing. This isn't how games work. This isn't how anything works, except media, advertising, and propaganda campaigns. This is how they work. So QAnon needs this type of media saturation because it's not a natural movement. People need to see this everywhere to make it feel like it's real, because if they see it everywhere, that enforces it for them. So now you can see that the spread of QAnon is very unlikely to be a natural thing. Rather, it is most likely operated by a specific group of people with specific interests, most likely very far in the right. The final part of this fun diggity ding ding thing. So ARGs rely on normally ARGs, we're not talking about QAnon now, but normal ARGs rely on a suspension of disbelief. So if you go to an escape room that is set in like a prison, like you immerse yourself in the world and you believe you're in a prison. But in the end, you know that you're playing a game and you know that it isn't real. Like, you will, in the back of your head, you know that none of it is real, but you suspend your disbelief. But with QAnon, it's the opposite. So QAnon people seek to uncover the real truth. And that's why these people think that it's not a game. Or to them, it's not a game. It's real life. It's absolutely real life to them. And that's why they have been calling the police, their state representatives, trafficking hotlines. That's why last time when we looked, there was that dude who went to the pizza place with a gun because he was trying to save the children, or the person who went to the Hoover Dam because Q had left him some messages. Because they think this is real. To them, this is not a game. And an important thing about apophenia, which we talked about. So basically, the difference between apophenia and science is the scientific process and the reliance on proof. It's basically the only difference. So with apophenia, people make the connection before they know for a fact if it's real or not. In science, you have a hypothesis and then you test it. And the facts determine the outcome, whether it feels good for you or not. You have to accept them if you're doing the science well. And after that, in the scientific process, you put up your results for peer review so others can replicate your test and see if they can find the same results to verify that. But with apophenia, you don't have that. You have facts, or you have your hypothesis, and then you just make the connections. And you're like, done. This feels good to me. Yeah, with QAnon, the proof is just more apophenia. The answer is whatever feels the best, or makes the most sense, or helps the story. Like just more, connect more, connect more, connect more. Whatever feels good, whatever works for you. Fuck it, let's go. And then if you begin to lose faith or interest in QAnon, you can just turn on Fox News and have senators and public figures, or hell, even the President of the United States cheering you on by name in your efforts to produce a credible and intriguing narrative from random bits of data all around you. Like Trump was saying that, hey, like me fighting against, pedophilia, I think that's a cool thing. Like, that sounds like a good goal. Or you have a person you have 50 people this year who have been running for public position, or was it Congress? I think it was Congress, for the Republican Party that believe in QAnon, and one of them is probably going to go through. So yeah, you have this proof all around you. So QAnon is an attempt to create a new reality for yourself that can be acted on. It can be lived in as is and manipulated, but doesn't actually match actual reality. Because if Q can do this, or sorry, if the players can do this, and they can do anything they want and blame the outcomes on any fictional plot point they choose. So, JFK Jr. was supposed to last weekend come out as being alive, although he died in the 90s. But they had a theory in the QAnon circle that he was actually going to reveal himself during the weekend, and that he would be the actual running mate with Trump for his 2020 election. That didn't happen, obviously, because JFK Jr. is dead. But I'm pretty sure that they already came up with reasons why that didn't happen. You know, they find other reasons why it didn't happen. They bend the truths. They create their own reality in which it makes sense to still believe in the same things. So, I hope this has been helpful for you to understand why QAnon is so damn enticing for people. It is a game. It is like a very, very fascinating augmented reality game. People get a sense of excitement, solving puzzles and riddles. They get a sense of community, belonging, purpose. It's understandable why this can hook so many people, and like it being a game, but then also it gained a huge platform due to being in mainstream platforms like Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. And then also now it's got major visibility as well. And due to COVID, people have had a lot more time on their hands and been bored at home, so they've gotten into this kind of stuff. So yeah, that is why QAnon is so damn enticing. And hey, you there on YouTube who is watching this right now, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please do like and subscribe and hit the bell down over there somewhere. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I will gladly answer them. And of course, I do stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 p.m. Central European Time on twitch.tv/funwithfondue. You can come over there and ask any questions that you like. See you next time.